Thursday, June the 8th, 2017. Greg, is adequate notice given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to both the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 6, 2017. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on January 6, 2017, and notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 6, 2017.
Thank you. Please stand for the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mauer?
Here.
Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Swartz?
Here.
Mayor Ritter?
Here. Do you have a motion to approve the agenda here?
So moved.
For a second?
Did we have a question about something here?
That's later.
Okay. Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
We have two presentations this evening. The first one is from Chris McMorland. He's the director of the Morris County Division of Mosquito Control. You may recall he was here last year when there was a lot of talk in the news about the Zika virus coming from mosquitoes. So he's back here tonight to talk about 'tis the season of mosquitoes and mosquito prevention and how we can do our part in our own homes, as it were, to help stop that, as well as talk a little about ticks. And there's been a lot of talk about Lyme disease and ticks and new types of ticks in the area. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris. So thank you for being here. I think we need it for the video.
Oh, okay. How's that better?
Perfect.
All right. All right, yeah, so thanks for having me back, Mayor Ritter. And again, what I'm going to, last year when I was here, we kind of really talked mostly about Zika and mosquitoes. This year we're going to talk a little bit about Zika because it's still in the news, it's still a concern, still something on everybody's mind. But we're going to talk ticks too, which I did not do last year, just because there seems to be a lot of questions and a lot of concerns regarding ticks, especially this season. So Zika virus, again, what is it? Well, it's an arbovirus, meaning it's something that's transmitted by a blood-sucking insect. In fact, most of the diseases, well, all the diseases I'll talk about tonight are arboviruses of some form. Mosquitoes, fleas, ticks, there's other ones, but those are the main ones that come to mind. From a mosquito standpoint, there are a whole litany of diseases that you can get, Zika included, but there's also yellow fever, dengue, chikungunya. The one that's probably most important, I know Zika's on everybody's mind, but West Nile is still #1 here in Morris County. Still in New Jersey, it's going to be #1. We do have other ones, Eastern equine encephalitis, which we've been kind of dealing with a little bit. Zika, for obvious reasons, because it's definitely on the news and it's what's on everybody's mind. So arboviruses, sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. Like, for example, West Nile. It's been here for 20-something years. You don't really hear about it in the news much. Some years we have a lot of it, but we keep it down. Some years I have trouble finding it, but it's here. It's always going to be here. Everything, like I said, all these viruses are cyclical. When it comes to mosquitoes, it's going to be very rain dependent. You know, are we going to have a lot of rain? We're going to have a lot of mosquitoes. The odd thing is, typically you would think that that's what's going to make a lot of virus activity. No. Usually when we have a lot of rain, we have a lot of nuisance mosquitoes, so I get a lot of calls regarding those. Those are the ones that, you know, typically you can't walk outside without getting inundated with, you know, 10,000 of them flying on you and getting sucked into your door like a vacuum when you open it. It's during dry periods that I actually have a lot more problems when it comes to West Nile virus itself. Zika is kind of a strange animal. We're all still learning about it ourselves. You know, it tends to be mostly something down in South America and the Caribbean. You know, when it comes to New Jersey, the main thing that you need is a proper vector. So the proper vector for Zika virus is the Aedes aegypti mosquito. The beauty of New Jersey is we do not have the Aedes aegypti mosquito. It does materialize every once in a while. It travels, whether it's as an egg or somehow it just winds up here. but there are no established populations of Aedes aegypti in New Jersey. Thank goodness. That's why Florida and Texas and some of these other places have so many problems, because they have a lot of aegypti. And aegypti is definitely something that's totally a man feeder. It likes to live in man-made containers. It just loves us. So I mean, it's a problem. We do, however, have another one. It's a cousin of the aegypti. It's called Aedes albopictus, or is more commonly known as the Asian tiger mosquito. If you look on the picture, the one on the right that's kind of black with a nice white stripe, it's actually a very pretty mosquito when you see it flying around. That's the Asian tiger mosquito. The one on the left is the aegypti. Again, it's brown. It's kind of got like a lyre shape on its thorax. It doesn't, you probably wouldn't notice it if it was flying around. But again, since we don't have that one, we do worry about the albopictus. We have populations of it in Morris County. In fact, when it infests the neighborhood, it actually becomes pest number 1. It's a rather difficult critter to get rid of. It really relies on, we need the homeowner to buy in on it, meaning that it's a container breeder. We need the homeowner to just clean up their yard. We need the neighbor to clean up their yard. We need to eliminate the habitat, is basically what I'm saying. It's a very difficult mosquito to treat because it'll utilize anything. If a bottle cap blows over and you have it sitting in your yard, they'll utilize that little amount of water. So us looking for habitat, yeah, we could pick out the main sources and try to treat them and knock them down or control them. But unless people are going out and actually cleaning up stuff in their yard, we'll never get rid of it. And it doesn't fly far, so it's only going to it goes from one neighbor to the next neighbor to the next neighbor, and pretty soon the whole neighborhood's infested, and then it becomes a real big issue. So this mosquito is the only one, well, right now, there's still a lot of studies going on out there regarding Zika, that has the possibility of transmitting Zika virus, or the potential rather. The nice thing, well, it's not so nice, but it is nice from a Zika transmission cycle. This one is a little less selective in its feeding habits. It's quite content to go feed on your dog, on your cat, on the raccoon that happens to come down out of the tree at night. It'll feed on just about anything, not just solely humans. So it is a vector, yeah, but it's not just solely feeding on us, so that makes it a little bit less of a problem when it comes to transmitting diseases. Don't get me wrong, it's got its whole other litany of diseases that thing can transmit itself. That's the dengue mosquito that a lot of people don't, chikungunya. There's, like I said, when it just comes to Zika, it's not as bad. So Zika cases in the U.S. and New Jersey, I'm sorry, this is just a hair old. I forget to look up at the latest one, but I don't think it changed much for the state of New Jersey at least. In Morris County, it's hard to read, we actually had 9 cases last year. You got to bear in mind, nothing in New Jersey was locally transmitted. This is all travel related. These are people that have traveled down to somewhere in the Caribbean, somewhere in South America, contracted the virus there, brought it back. Now, why is that a concern? Well, because you do have a certain period of time when you're viremic. If you happen to live where there's a bunch of Aedes albopictus, Asian tigers floating around, there is the potential that those mosquitoes could pick the virus up and transmit it to the next person. So when we get a report, typically, we'll go around to the neighborhood that, wherever the resident happens to live, and we'll really scour the area and try to control any albopictus that's going on. We try to minimize, and providing that they're listening to whatever the health department or their doctor saying, staying inside and until they're not viremic, it should minimize any impact it has up here in Morris County. Now, there are a few cases in the United States that were local. Again, these were mostly in Florida and Texas. I mean, I think it was the Miami-Dade area was really in the news a lot last year because they did have some areas of local transmission. But again, we're talking aegypti, and not only are we talking aegypti, they got both down there. They have aegypti and Asian tigers, so they got the double whammy going on down there. Mosquito prevention. You know what? It's the same thing. I've been in mosquito control for 20-something years, and we'll leave it at that. I've been telling people the same exact thing for 20-something years. Most of the time people listen. Sometimes they do not. There are a ton of things that you can do to protect yourself. Number one is use a repellent. If you're going to be outside where it's mosquito habitat or it's, especially at dusk and dawn, wear a mosquito repellent. DEET, great product. Picaridin, another great product. There is a IR 3434, which I do not have listed. That's the product in Avon Skin So Soft. A lot of people have heard about that. So you can get something not DEET related if you choose not to wear DEET. There is also the lemon of eucalyptus. Now, these are the ones that are all recommended by the CDC. I would not recommend another product if it was not recommended by the CDC. You'll see a ton of other stuff. I mean, you could take your chances with it. I mean, there's a ton of like these botanicals and other things, but if there's no science behind it, I'm not going to tell you to put it on. You know, if it makes you feel better, help yourself. The other thing you could do, long pants and shirts. Is it practical in the middle of summer when it's like 9,000 degrees out? No, but you know what? If you want to avoid mosquito bites, that's what some of the things you need to do. And again, we discussed avoid certain times of the day. Dawn and dusk tend to be the most active. However, if you live on certain areas, like, you know, along the rivers or something like that, trust me, they're going to be bothering you all day. It might just pick up, but are you going to notice the difference between 50 of them coming at you or 500? Probably not. You're just going to be running for your car or running wherever you can go. That's when you call us. We'll come down, take a look, and see what we can do to help. Ticks. So let's talk ticks real fast, very briefly. Ticks are arachnids, right? They're not technically insects. They have 8 legs rather than 3. They only have 2 body parts. They're pretty interesting critters as they go through an egg, a larva, a nymph, and an adult stage. Now, believe it or not, it's the larval and nymph stage you got to really watch out for, because you know why? You could barely see them if they're on you. I mean, it looked like the tiniest of freckle, and you have to stare at it to see if it's moving. There are 3 types of ticks in this area that you need to watch out for. The black-legged tick, which was also called the deer tick. You'll hear that interchanged a lot, but it's technically the black-legged tick. The American dog tick, which is the one that most people think about a lot of times if they're not thinking about the deer tick. It's usually when it's on your dog and all of a sudden becomes like this huge raisin that you got to pull off, and it's kind of yucky. But when you're adults, they're so big you can see them walking around on you. There is the Lone Star tick in the state of New Jersey. We're probably a little on here north for it, maybe right on the border. Again, I don't see it all that much. My colleagues down in central and southern Jersey see it all the time. It's actually a rather aggressive little tick. I've been down doing some studies where I've actually seen these ones coming after you. You know, normally they're just kind of sitting on a blade of grass waiting for you to walk by. The Lone Star tick actually seeks you out, which makes them kind of interesting and a little spooky all at the same time. So prevention. Again, repellent. That's the beauty of the insect repellent, is that it works for both ticks and mosquitoes. Again, the same active ingredients. In fact, I left some literature on the back that has all kinds of information regarding ticks. Tick habitat. This is the one where you can definitely try to minimize your contact with ticks by staying in a tick-free area or a tick-safe area. They do not like manicured lawns. So if you're hanging out in manicured lawns, chances of you coming in contact with a tick are minimal. It's when you go in that border area, that's the worst. That's where they're all hanging out. That's where they're waiting. That's where the larvae and the nymph are hanging out underneath the litter layer. That's where they're questing and waiting for, typically like for black-legged, like a deer to come by. And the funny thing is, it's not just deer that the black-legged tick like. I mean, the main culprit, or one of the biggest culprits in the whole Lyme disease transmission cycle, is white-footed mice. So, I mean, they're feeding on them. They're feeding on deer. They're feeding on us. They're feeding everything. Tick check. I can't tell you how important it is to do a tick check on yourself, do a tick check on your dog after spending any time out in the woods. You do have a little bit of time to get the ticks off. You just got to be very thorough. You got to check everywhere. I mean, I do a lot of camping and hiking with my kids, and trust me, we do a very good tick check when we're done, because you do not want any of these go unnoticed and start hanging on. So we've been trying to put out some more literature. This is one of the ones that we just kind of created for to put out by trail systems and stuff. And it's really, again, it's really to try to, with all the public education that we do, all the literature that we drop, we try to come to as many like festivals and do as many talks as possible just to educate the public regarding ticks and mosquitoes, mostly mosquitoes. Ticks is kind of, I don't want to say a side project, but it's just something that goes hand in hand with us. But this is one that we've created for people that like to hike and like to be out in the woods. And again, it's all the stuff that I've basically been talking about, but it's brand new for us this year, and we're hoping that we get it posted in some of the parks and stuff so people have a chance to take a look at it and help themselves. And again, I can't stress enough, use an insect repellent. This one's a really good chart, and it shows you like about how long you're going to get of protection for the concentration of the active ingredient that you use. Now, this does go up to a 20-50% D. I personally never recommend anything higher than 30. 30% is probably the max that you'll ever need. 50 is way overkill. If you have children, make sure that you're applying something on children. Make sure that you're applying something at a lower dosage rate or a lower percentage of active ingredient. What you just need to be mindful of is remember that it doesn't last nearly as long and you might need to reapply. But again, you know, even with kids, you know, like a 5%, a 7% is perfect. You know, just be mindful about it. And there's a ton of products out there. And there's a lot of good resources that you can go to too, because you know, I didn't harp on them, but ticks have their own list of diseases, and I was trying to keep this, you know, sort of to the minimum. But I mean, limes in Morris County, limes in New Jersey, we're like ground zero probably for like the country. You know, we have a ton of it, and people just need to be very careful about it. So I would always recommend go check out the CDC webpage, New Jersey Department of Health, a lot of good information regarding there. Local health departments have a lot of good information. My own webpage has a lot of good information, a lot of literature and handouts that you can do for both ticks and for Zika. You know, CDC is going to have the most latest and greatest and the best updates regarding Zika virus itself. Plus, it'll give you any kind of travel warnings and stuff as to where it's been very active. You know, even if you decide to go down there, I would follow all my recommendations by wearing like a repellent, trying to avoid some of those times a day. I know it's rather difficult when, you know, the long sleeves and pants might not be so practical when you're down in, you know, whatever island you choose, but, you know, there are things that you can do even when away. I think that's it. Anybody have any questions?
I had a quick question. In terms of spraying for mosquitoes, is there a schedule for that, or how do you determine where you spray and when you spray? And
Okay, then that's a great question. Schedule? No, I do not believe in any kind of schedule. What we are driven by what they call an integrated pest management program. I need to see numbers. We put some science behind what we're doing. So what we'll do is if we get a problem, just call. You know, we're a public agency, just call us up, we'll come out, we'll first see what we're dealing with, see if we can control the larvae right off the bat, collect some specimens, because we need to see what we're dealing with, like what species we're dealing with. Remember, there are about 40 different species here in Morris County, so we want to see what kind we're dealing with, what we're working with. We will then treat whatever is as necessary. Some of the locations that we've been having lots of problems with have been up in like Montville and Lincoln Park, but they sit on like Great Peace Meadows and some of these huge floodplains, and we've had a lot of rain. You know, it's kind of rare to see the sun now, or so it seems. So I mean, we've been dealing with a lot of those issues, and then we'll treat however we deem it. You know, whatever is going to be the most effective, whether it be using a backpack sprayer, an all-terrain vehicle sprayer, and we go into the woods and we try to treat where they're hiding out and hanging out before they come out. Sometimes when it gets so bad, I mean, we do like the truck mounted stuff, and we'll drive around neighborhoods. You know, and that's always typically done very, you know, later at night and stuff like that when there are less people out and the mosquitoes are pretty active. But yeah, to have like a regular schedule, I mean, I don't think it's appropriate. I mean, you end up putting out stuff when you don't need to put out stuff. You end up wasting money. There's just lots of things wrong with it.
I have a question on that, Chris. You know, from a homeowner's perspective, you know, there's a lot of vendors out there that are selling, you know, the mosquito fogging or the mosquito bombs for their backyards that will supposedly reduce the population of mosquitoes, you know, throughout the summer. What's your view in terms of the effectiveness of that and your advice to, you know, local residents who, you know, their doors get knocked on all day long about this?
I know, it's a rather sticky situation, I guess, for myself. All right, so from what I gather, a lot of these companies, what they end up using is some kind of a barrier treatment. It's probably no different than, you know, you can go to like a hardware store and buy like a cutter that you attach to your hose and treat all your shrubs and give yourselves a barrier. Will they work? Trust me, I know some areas where I wouldn't want to put any money on, you know. I mean, again, those put you on a schedule, and if you feel better with it, there's so many things that you can do yourself, my personal opinion, and, you know, we are free service. We will come out and check and treat as necessary. I mean, you know, it's not something we do for, like, you know, if you're having like a picnic in your backyard or something. I mean, but if you have a legitimate problem, yeah, we're going to come out and we're going to help you out. So from that standpoint, I don't know. You'd have to. I would research it. I'll put it that way.
All right, thank you.
You know?
Chris, I've got a couple of questions.
Yes.
Obviously, our National Wildlife Preserve is right around the corner, and
Yep.
here you are, Morris County. You can't go in and tell the National Wildlife Federation what to do about the Great Swamp, and yet it's such a breeding ground, obviously, and it's huge. So what can residents do, or what can you do around that barrier area to
Yeah.
help residents who deal with the Great Swamp?
Yeah, the Great Swamp's an interesting character in that, you know, as you said, I have no jurisdiction over it whatsoever. I mean, it's federal property. They, you know, part of their philosophy is that mosquitoes are part of the natural part of nature, and it happens, yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to like treating, I mean, we can go right up, you know, we can treat somebody's property if we had to, even if they border the swamp. I mean, that's, we would actually make our applications to right, you know, on the resident's property. I would suspect, I mean, I don't, you know, if there was some kind of virus activity or something like that, I'm sure we would work something out with them that we would have to do, like, you know, one-time treatment, or, you know, it's not unheard of. You know, other colleagues of mine do treat like certain, you know, wildlife management areas if they have to, but, you know, from a resident standpoint, I mean, it's going to be tough because no matter, even if I treat, you know, it's only going to take a little bit of time before those mosquitoes come back, and it's only for a very brief season. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong. I would love to live right next to the Great Swamp. It'd be pretty cool, I think.
Right.
But
Now, the other thing you mentioned was actually spraying neighborhoods, and we've had so much attention paid over the last few years about pesticide-free neighborhoods, pesticide-free parks. We have Colony Swim Club here, which is in the woods, essentially. So how do we balance that? And if you were going to spray a neighborhood because of a serious mosquito issue in a neighborhood, how would you alert people, and can they opt out, so to speak, because they don't want pesticides on their lawn? What are you going to do with the neighbors who are complaining about it? How do
Yeah.
we balance that?
that's, again, another very interesting situation that we have run into in the past. And so let's break it down in sections. So first of all, chances of me doing like a neighborhood, I'm going to have to see a lot of service requests coming in. I mean, a lot of neighbors complaining. You know, it's one of those things where the main thing I would say is check our webpage. I post everything well in advance where we're going to be. Even stuff that I'm not required to post, I post it because I just want people to know where we're going, what we're doing, why we're out there, you know. And I will let you know if it's because there's some kind of West Nile related or virus related, or if it's just nuisance related. But when it comes to like people trying to like opt out or something along those lines, typically I don't really have that much of an issue with people trying to like people calling me up to opt out. Like, you know, trust me, at like 11 o'clock at night, if the truck's coming down, we're not going to know exactly which yard is yours or which yard is not yours, you know. If we see people, yeah, we turn off the machine and drive past them, and, you know, unfortunately, it leaves a gap that, you know, the mosquitoes are still hanging out in. But we're very mindful of people's, you know, philosophies towards insecticides and what they're doing. And again, you got to bear in mind, the stuff that we're using is public health insecticide. It's meant to be broadcast, you know, out. It's it's such a minute amount. It's just atomized basically and floating through the air. You're killing mosquitoes, not elephants. It's not a lot in your product, you know. I mean, you wouldn't even know it.
Pets and children.
You know, I always just give everybody the same warning that I want. You know, technically you're probably all right, but I mean, I would, if you were worried about like kids' toys and stuff that are outside, just hose them off. I mean, trust me, the stuff is gone within like, you know, just a couple hours. I mean, just from sunlight hitting it.
At 11 o'clock at night, how does the neighborhood know that you've been there?
We probably wouldn't even know. I mean, hopefully they know because they get some relief from the mosquitoes is what I'm what the whole, you know, what the end game would hopefully be. But I mean, sometimes that happens, and sometimes we have to come out again, you know. Not so much in Chatham Township. I don't remember, there's not too many areas that we have that kind of an issue going on as far as like trying to do like neighborhoods and stuff. We will do smaller locations, you know, usually ATV mount, and ATV, you don't even know we're there. We're in the woods, you know, just treating something and taking care of something. The other ones that we're very mindful of too is we're very good with our beekeepers. You know, we have a lot of them here in Morris County. We have about 100 of them, so we coordinate and we let them know, you know, what we're going to be doing so they can cover hives and, you know, and keep an eye on their own hive, you know, and this way, you know, nobody here is trying to, you know, we're trying to just kill our target species and, you know, keep everybody safe and, you know, hopefully, you know, improve quality of life. Because there's certain places, you know, people won't even, you can't even step outside and enjoy your yard. You know, it's just so awful.
All right, it's great to know though. If they go to the website, they can find information on.
And the other thing is too, if people are interested, what they can do is if they call and send us a letter with their information on it, we will make sure that we give them a 12-hour notification. You know, we'll call you up and say, hey, we're going to be in your neighborhood, you know, blah blah blah, you know, so that you can do whatever you want to do with it. You know.
That's great. That's very important. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions,
Anything
Chris?
else?
Well, thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate
Very
it.
welcome.
Our next report is from Kelly Loufborough. She's the coordinator of the Municipal Alliance Committee of the Chathams, otherwise known as MAC.
Hi. First, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to orient yourself and hear a little bit about what we've been working on and what we feel is important and how we're spending our funding. So I will try to do this really quickly. I think the most important part of our committee is that we bring as many sectors as we can think of in our town together to specifically talk about alcohol and substance abuse. And one of the challenges for us is that we want to be very specific in talking about substance abuse. However, there's so much evidence that many people who are dealing with addiction diseases have started before the age of 18 and using substances before the age of 18. So one of the things we really try to focus on is the younger population. So with that, at a really young age, what do you do for those young children to establish the best prevention? And one of those is good decision-making, healthy choice-making, and self-advocacy. So you'll see in some of the program information that that's where we're trying to focus, as well as we support the entire community from age 0 up through our senior community. So just so you know, our committee has law enforcement, SAC counselors from the school, representatives from the faith community. We're working hard to get both St. Pat's and Chatham Day School on board. We have Project Community Pride. Senior Center now is sitting at the table with us again. The rec department sits at the table with us again. And then many parents who are involved. Just for a very brief overview of our funding, which most of you I'm sure are aware, the bulk of our funding comes from JCATA, which is the Governor's Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse. And then they provide 80% of the funding that is matched by both municipalities, the borough and the township, by 20%, which ends up being a little bit more specific on the next page, approximately $2,600 a year from both the township and the borough. That is all part of our JCATA and DETR grant. Then we frequently get a supplemental grant as well that comes from the freeholders, and that is something that is, our regular grant is funded from July to the following end of June, whereas the freeholder grant is January to December. The challenge with it is we don't usually get the funding until September. So we have this unique gap in funding that happens between June and September. And yet it's a key time for teenage programming, family programming. So we've been trying to work with that, and we do our best to use our resources the best we can through the summer. So as of now, the freeholder application went in, and we're supposed to hear at the end of the week whether we'll get that one for this entire year. So you'll see we're just getting the award for the freeholder grant, if we get it, in about 2 weeks. And yet it was technically a January to December grant. But that's okay. We are very appreciative of all of the funding sources we get. So we do use all of our funds to capacity, and we try to do the best we can to spread it among the different sectors. So dividing it between community events, schools, churches, any other community event that we can think of partnering with. So you'll see some of the things we did this year. We were able to have a resource table at the Suicide Prevention Walk. That was an excellent event that you all hosted, or helped host. And we have been doing more since I started in June. We've been working very hard to partner with the 2 other organizations in the area that are working on the same mission. And one is the Madison Alliance, and so we're doing more and more with them. And so in the fall, we partnered to show Screenagers, which is all about kind of technological addiction and technological use with teenagers today. And that was very well attended. We had over 350 people come to see that documentary, which we are looking to bring back this fall. Then MCC is a newer organization to our towns. It's the Madison Chatham Coalition. And the nice thing about that is we are state funded. The coalition is a national organization, and the funding is coming from national sources. So their initiatives are a little bit different. So we don't have, we're very grassroots. We want to do things directly in the community. The coalition, on the other hand, is more focused on funding large campaigns that are coming across the country and focusing on data accruement. So they helped the school district do a wellness survey this year. And that's been invaluable to both us and the coalition. All community organizations that can use that data. So you'll see the state did a new knockout opiate day, and that's something we will do again in October and stay very focused on. I won't go through the list of everything, but one of the things that really impresses me, the more I do this grant, the more I appreciate our town. Our SAC counselors are amazing in the school district. And so we partner with them all the time. And these are the kinds of messages that we're trying to get out to these kids and to the community. Dr. Lususa was here and talked about his big stressor is stress and suicide. And so we try to bring that into those are the same drivers to alcohol and drug abuse. So these are the things that we've been supporting at the middle school. Just a Little Breathing Room is a space that was created that we partnered with Chatham Education Foundation and the schools to have a place where kids can decompress and be for a few minutes during the day before they can go back out and be with peers. And I just wanted you to see some of the messaging that's on some of those walls. And the Red Ribbon Week is Drug Awareness Week. And Alex Emmer did this beautiful chalk wall and wrote, "What is your natural high?" And she had to erase it and redo it 3 or 4 times during the day. The kids really took to it, and it had the most amazing things on it. Anyway, poetry and music, and anyway, so. The other thing that the school district has been fantastic about that we've been trying to do more with, we do the usual lead evidence-based drug prevention, so very targeted information. But we've also tried to support mindfulness and mindfulness programming, and I don't know if you've known, the school district's doing Focus for 5, and that's where they're teaching the kids to take time twice a day to breathe and slow down and quiet themselves. So we believe very strongly in that kind of learning opportunity, that when you know how to calm yourself more effectively and in a healthy, natural way, as opposed to with substances, you have a much a decreased risk of addiction problems later in life. So let's keep going. So one of the things that we've been really working hard, that I've been working hard on, is, like I mentioned, bringing more people to the table. So we have met with Chatham Day School recently, and the Senior Center and the Rec Department, and we're working on St. Pat's. Then next year, the survey really helped us identify our 4 main areas that we need to focus on. Granted, these look like pretty much all comprehensive, all what you would expect to look at, but very specifically it came across in the survey that we did with the students that 70% of our children, 60% of our high schoolers aren't drinking. So we're going to focus on the messaging of that, of more of your, like, you're a part of the bigger group if you're not drinking, and helping them get that message out and kind of flipping the message a little bit. However, of those 35, 40 kids who are drinking, binge drinking is a major issue. The drinking quickly before they go to an event. And so we are going to really focus on binge drinking education and how many drinks is binge drinking, and helping them understand. They seem to be rather laid back. If a peer was drinking 4 or 5 drinks, they did not see that as a lot of alcohol. And that's for the kids who are drinking. And for us, that's very problematic. And that's something we need to clarify the messaging on. Then the other thing that's been an explosion at the high school, and some at the middle school if you talk to parents, is the whole issue of vaping and e-cigarettes. So we have been hitting that hard. We're helping getting the school district signs for the bathroom, and are trying to promote that at Fishawak, and trying to encourage education of teachers and anybody in the community, parents, what the devices look like, orienting yourself to what has nicotine, what doesn't have nicotine, and the unknown risks of much of the e-cigarette and vaping issues. The vape of choice right now for most kids is one that does not have a nicotine-free option, which is concerning, because nicotine is what's addictive in cigarettes. And yet 90% of the kids would say in the survey that they do not agree with smoking, and they think smoking is bad, yet they're not making the connection that a vaping device is also with nicotine. So we're going to help clarify that messaging. Marijuana has changed a lot in the last 10 years, and we're trying to make sure that people really understand that, because as laws become more lax and more people are adopting it in their state, it's allowing the children to be much more accepting of using it. And yet THC levels and change in the chemical are driving a lot of kids to addiction. We had the presentation last week by a student from Cornell who talked about how that's what he started with, just the use of marijuana, and then it took him down a very dangerous path. I'm not saying it's a gateway drug, but we're trying to impart that it's dangerous in and of itself. And then we're really to the point where we need our community to kind of take the call to action when it comes to opioid awareness. I thought the presentation that was here was fantastic, and I was really pleased that there were other community members that we were able to partner with to bring something also to the high school the following week, because people who couldn't be at the presentation that was here came to the next one. And I did recently a letter to the editor trying to just talk about some of the key figures and why this is so important, and the age of kids in residential recovery is dropping dramatically. In 5 years, we're going from 35 to 25. That's probably not a fully accurate statistic, but it's something that is that dramatic. They're really seeing a change in what's happening to our youth and young adults. Anyway, so we will take that on really hard this year. So between vaping and opiate use, we will basically shake the community. That's our hope. So I think some of the areas that we know we need to improve is becoming a resource. So partnering a little bit more with MCC and MASA, and making sure our resource lists are accessible, and that our website is active. Right now, it's really an inactive website, and that's just a resource issue. The problem with our committee is that everyone comes from a sector, which means they're all personally involved in other areas, and it's their job. The challenge is getting volunteers that actually can do more, and that's something we'll continue to work on. So the other thing that we're going to really try to do is use media, social media, and press much more, try to have an article every month and be a little more consistent. And then a big focus for us is youth. One of the missing pieces of our committee is youth. And so we are coming up with the idea to have CHAMPS actually. It's Chatham and Madison Peer Solutions, and they will basically be students that we can actually send to a summer camp, who get trained to then be peer advocates. They've done this in other towns, and we're trying to understand what they've done and what's been successful, and then work really in our schools. There's always been SAD and some of the other drug and alcohol prevention type of organizations, but they're really very quiet at the high school and practically non-existent. So we're going to work to try to create something that's outside of the schools a little bit more, and kids from both communities, so it's a place they can go that's outside of that school environment. And then we have a whole Beyond the Basement initiative that we're looking at. So to combat that binge drinking and drinking, the number one access to alcohol is in the home. And so we're going to take the stance of trying to get the kids out of the home, into the climbing gym, into the tennis court places, see what we can provide on the weekends. Drip Coffee is fantastic. They want to do trivia nights. We're really excited with the ways Ogden has a teen room, which is completely unused. So we're going to find all the spaces we can think of in the town and ask the kids what they want, because that piece has been missing a little bit. We've been doing programming without their voice. So I would say that wraps us up. I would really like to know what you think, if we're missing something, what else you think we need to prioritize, and how we can better serve the community.
Kelly, I'll tell you what, this is great. I was the liaison for our Board of Health for the first couple of years on committee, so had a chance to get in on the ground floor with the Madison Chatham Coalition and got to know Lisbeth and the entire 12 sectors of the community there as well. And one thing I think we can't stop beating the drum about is that eye roll you get when you talk about marijuana use. And you get the total eye roll. You should decriminalize it. It's not a gateway drug. Just, you know, everybody does it. Parents do it. Kids do it. And it's a really tough nut to crack when you think about it, because it's become almost socially acceptable regardless of the illegality of it and so on. I don't know how you do that, except for really, you can't talk enough about the fact that it's illegal, it's bad for you, and everybody rolls their eyes at you.
Well, and I think one of the things we're trying to focus on is fact-based messaging. So everything we're doing, like vaping, what's the big deal?
Right,
So we're
what's the
coming
big
from
deal?
that standpoint, and then just listing the facts. You know, marijuana, what's the big deal? And so really understanding why it's a big deal. And one of the most challenging things for parents to understand is that, I mean, I think most people know that the adolescent brain is an adaptable and vulnerable brain. However, we are seeing more and more MRI images, and we have great facts of the deterioration of the myelination of nerves and what's called neuropruning, where you're basically, your body on 2 or 3 exposures to chemicals when you're under the age of, say, 21, is so efficient and so incredibly adaptive that that's all it takes. And then it's saying, great, you provided that for me, I know you can get it, so I don't have to make that anymore, which causes all kinds of problems when it comes to dopamine and things that deal with your energy level and appetite and focus. And so we're not quite, we were hoping this year to bring like a doctor in or someone, but honestly, parent presentations aren't that well attended for the most part. So we're trying to find other ways. So we're working with Lisa Lattarulo on doing teen tips, little short video clips, things that we can try to find other ways to get messaging out.
I have another question for you. Regarding, in the MCC, we've been trying to draw in the athletic community because we are so involved in our sports. Madison is no different, obviously. To get the coaching community on board and to make them be more proactive about their athletes who are involved in binge drinking or coming to a game hungover or doing all these things. And it seems to almost be, I don't want to say a conflict of interest, but you know, these kids are real comrades and they're out there and they're...
Well, the nice thing is, to be honest, is right now we have an opportunity. There's so much messaging about opioid use and prescription drugs that Madison last year had the MAC chair go and speak with the coaches. So when they gather the parents in the fall for the coaches and parent night, we're hoping to be there and talk about opioid use, but also talk about other substance abuse related to coaching parents and athletes. And I think accident injuries and broken bones are such a targeted path to opiate complications and misuse later that we have to get that message out right now. And so we have the opportunity to then talk about some other substance abuse issues too.
So
just want to thank Kelly for coming. I mean, when I attend the MAC meetings, it's just an eye-opener to really have the representatives of all the different sectors sharing ideas, and it's really a brainstorming session that's always productive. So, congratulations.
Yes. And
Pleasure having you on the committee. Yeah.
so thank you, Kelly. I again echo those comments. Appreciate the fine work that you do as the newest coordinator and all the volunteers in the organization itself. I would ask, is there, from your perspective in the Township Committee and what we're doing to support you, is anything, what else can we do to help support or echo or promote what you're doing? I think we try to get out there as much as possible, but.
I mean, I think at the reality of the opiate crisis right now, the epidemic, is that any sector, any activity around it and bring it into the community is great. And then partnering together, like we were able to have a resource table here when you held the presentation. I don't care what sector it comes from or where it's coming from in the community, but making sure that we communicate with each other and getting better communication between the different organizations is really, for me, the most important thing, is just trying to keep the right email lists and linking when something is happening so that we can help disseminate what you're doing and vice versa.
Great. And if parents are out there, they want to learn more about your organization, is there, you said there is a website, but it's out of date?
Yeah, I would
or-
say maybe Facebook is an easier
Facebook.
one, or reaching out directly through email at chathammac@gmail.com. But the Facebook, you can definitely link through Facebook to us at Chatham Mac, and then also our website is chathammac, I don't even know, .org, I think.
Is this the Elks, like the Elks Club?
Yes, actually, they have fantastic resource material. What I gave you was just some of our messaging, and I was just trying to let you see some of the resources that we provide and kind of the range of topics that we try to keep resource material on.
Their initiatives?
Yes, they actually have a specific initiative around substance abuse.
That's great.
Yeah, their materials are really good. We've been working hard to get more of them.
No, I'm just going to say, an excellent presentation. I think it's wonderful that you have a focus and a priority, and you seem to, know what that is and going after it. So, which is good for the organization. So, nice job.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to reports. Start with John.
No reports.
Mike?
Thank you, Mayor. Kelly certainly just gave an excellent, better report than I could ever give on the MAC, so that makes my job easier. On the DPW, as you can imagine, with the rain this spring, they've been struggling to keep up with the growing grass on all the athletic fields and parks. They are interviewing for one full-time vacancy that they have on their staff, and 11 of the 12 summer positions have been filled, so they're in pretty good shape there and working hard to get their jobs done. They've finished the mulch deliveries, which were very popular, and there is still mulch available at the composting area for people who still desire some and can get down there and get some of their own. The tentative repaving schedule for the summer has been put out online and on the Township website, and the DPW has been prepping those streets, raising the manholes and different connections so that in preparation, and also you may have noticed all around town any damaged Belgian block is being repaired in preparation for paving. So those roads will look real good when they're done. So it's been a busy season, and thank you, Rich, to you and your people.
Thank you, Mike. Kevin?
No reports, but I just want to congratulate Mr. Kelly and Mrs. Swartz on their Republican primary victory, and wishing you well into November and hopefully the same outcome.
There you go, on to November. Thank you, Kevin. It's a pleasure to represent the folks of Chatham Township, one of the great pleasures of my life. To piggyback on Mike's report on DPW, we did talk, Rich and I did, about the pallet that's being laid, the cement's being poured for our new recycling compactor down at our DPW depot, at our recycling depot, I should say. We're expecting delivery of that when the concrete settles. It's going to do the job of 2 of the 30-yard roll-offs, so they will be removing some of those large ones. The disadvantage of the roll-offs as they exist right now is that they get rain and snow, and it adds to the contamination, and the value decreases of our recycling. So no battle plan stands up to the first encounter with the enemy, as they say. Once that compactor goes in, we'll analyze the traffic patterns as they come through. and make sure that our residents are getting in there and getting their recyclables dropped off and keep the line moving, as they say. So it won't be the final assessment until we see how the compactor is delivered and then how the traffic flow goes through there. But it's exciting news. Rob Walton, our JCP&L representative, came by just to extend his regards, and nothing really to report from his end, although JCP&L is always there for us. We have a great relationship with them. If you have any concerns about your electricity or the wires or any outages, you can report directly to them or report to us, because we have an open 24/7 wire to them. The Lafayette Avenue water main, speaking of our utility service, we've had a couple of residents come to us and express some concerns, and rightfully so. The pavement settles unevenly, particularly in the warmer climates. They cannot repave Lafayette Avenue until we're satisfied that the initial pavement has settled in there. Additionally, some neighbors have asked about the restoration of their lawns. They've installed new hydrants, they've installed new water meters. They have come by over the last week with their contractor, Montana, to reevaluate where the ruts are particularly dangerous or hazardous, and also to do some additional restoration on folks' lawns where they had issues there. And John, you can explain from an engineering perspective what we would like to see from them regarding repaving Lafayette. They're not going to do it until after the school year, because it would be a nuisance to do the repaving while school is still in session. That was the reason we chose this particular cycle to begin with. And news from our senior center, some very exciting stuff. One of our members of Board of Chosen Freeholders, Doug Cabana, will be at the senior center on June 23rd at 12:30 to discuss the role of freeholder, particularly here in Morris County. Doug is a great friend to Chatham Township, so it's very nice that he's going to come on down. That's Friday, June 23rd at our senior center. The senior center is also running a day trip to New Jersey Jackals baseball. Give them a call if you have any interest. That's July 19th. They are going to provide bus and box lunch tickets to the game, and perhaps time to explore the Yogi Berra Museum, and that is going to be July 19th. Please contact the senior center if you have if you have interest. AARP Smart Driver class, which is a value to many of us on our insurance, June 19th and July 10th for the AARP Smart Driver class, and July 25th is going to be a free seminar and panel presentation on some senior issues. So it'll be an open discussion and panel on trusts and estates, hospice and home care, downsizing and funeral planning, all interesting topics that impact our seniors and their families. So there's a lot going on at the senior center. Their calendar is online, and these are all notes from our director, Pam Mansfield, who wants to make sure that we're all on top of what's going on at the senior center. And that's it, Your Honor.
Great, thank you very much. Two quick things. The first is Tom Salvis, Communications Director, informed me that he's finished editing the opioid presentation we hosted a few weeks ago, so that'll be posted online on our website sometime later next week. We'll promote that on the homepage as well as in social media, so those who could not attend the event can watch the video from their homes. The other item we want to talk about is Colony Pool. Successful opening a couple weekends ago. Registration remains open. People can register at thecolonypoolclub.org. We're going to be having an open house on June 17th and 18th that weekend, where admission, as it were, or membership for that weekend is free. So we encourage anyone who has an interest in testing the waters, so to speak, to come on out for the week and enjoy a great weekend of family fun at the Colony Pool Club. John?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I don't recall if you announced this at the last meeting, but we did receive a grant for $82,500 to pave Roberts, a portion of Dale and Spring Street. So we did receive that grant. I did immediately get plans, specifications, certifications, all the documentation that the DOT needs to process and ultimately allow us to use those funds. So I'm diligently trying to get that approval in place so things go very smoothly with our paving schedule, that this can just be included in and we don't have a break in the paving. On the the consent agenda, you'll notice that there is a resolution for amending the budget for the DOT grant. There's also 2 other contracts that's awarding the paving to the Morris County Co-op for the actual paving, and then a second contract for some line striping that's required. So that's on the agenda. We also have on the agenda the award of the contract for the Woodland Road pathway, so we can get moving on that project. Regarding the paving, we did get a notification that the contractor that has the Morris County contract, didn't give me a reason why, but he is using a subcontractor to pave the roads in Chatham. It's Safano Construction. I worked with them before. They're actually a larger contractor than the contractor that got the contract. So I don't see any problem with them utilizing a sub. They may have just been inundated with the amount of work that comes through the co-op and didn't anticipate it. But nevertheless, I'm now working with Safano. We are finalizing the schedule. It is being pushed off, and a revised schedule is going to be posted hopefully tomorrow, but the work is not going to start until the week of July 10th. And then after July 10th, basically we have 3 neighborhoods. Sunset neighborhood is going to be July 10th. The Van Houten neighborhood is going to be July 17th, and then the Dale Drive neighborhood is going to be July 24th. And the specific dates at which each road is going to be milled and paved, we have each road listed in the notice, and we'll update that regularly up to the, continuously through the whole project, because even through the project, if we get a rain day or if there's some type of delay, a trucking delay, things get put off. So we'll be, once the paving starts, we'll even be updating the schedule daily to keep up with that. But there will be a new schedule posted, if not Friday, Monday, regarding the new schedule.
Great.
John, where exactly is the Woodland Avenue sidewalk? Is it going to be from the Geralda Farms entrance and then west toward Treadwell, past Geralda Farms? Is that?
It's going to be from the entrance at the crosswalk at that location to Treadwell.
Okay.
So basically, we tried to meander the path through the woods as much as we could, but because of DEP wetland issues, it is close to the road for the most part, even from constraints that we have. But it does basically go around like that.
And as far as New Jersey American Water coming in to do Lafayette, we were talking about the longer the roadbed has a chance to settle, the better it is for
Correct.
the long haul. If they wanted to come in and do it at a time when we're already doing our paving projects in our neighborhoods, that would probably add to some difficulty in our township. What do we think?
We do have to finalize that schedule in which they pave. We are still seeing, even, we always see settlement regarding even how well a contractor compacts the trench. We always see settlement with utility work. And it is in our best interest to make sure that all the settlement has occurred, because once they pave, we want the road to last 20 years plus without any settlement. And the worst thing that can happen is within a very short period of time, we start seeing 2 lines down the center of the
Right.
road, because that's where the trench was.
Right.
And I've seen it happen many times. So I am leaning towards making the recommendation is to push it off to the fall, and it would be done during the school year. However, the milling that they do is something that they could easily do and not disrupt traffic, and we can coordinate that so that they do the same type of timing, 9 o'clock to 2 and those type of things. But, or we may want to push it off even longer to another year, because I think if we pave it too soon, we're going to see the settlement.
And you think summertime is too soon from your
Yeah, I
perspective?
think for what we're seeing around the trenches and what we're seeing, I'm concerned that it is too soon. Now, they were diligent with the work, but they did rush the work. They did rush getting the main in to get this done so that it wasn't disrupted to the school, and that does possibly compromise some of the integrity or some of the compaction that they could have done more time. It's always at the end
Are
of the
they
day.
coming back to make some repairs to that temporary pavement?
Well, they have to.
Because there's sections that are
Yeah,
almost undrivable.
And we've spoken about it with them. If they persist, then they'll come back. I talked to them this week.
Well, I mean, they need to come back now and make repairs to what's out there.
Are you talking about as of today, that you
I-
have been
I-
on it?
Yes,
Because I'm certainly
absolutely. I was
happy to
on
go
it
back to
yesterday. In particular, the end of Lafayette near your neighborhood, you know, there's some sections there that, you know, it's awful.
Yep.
Yeah, by Pine, if they haven't fixed
Yeah.
it yet, right by the intersection of Pine, it's very bad.
I wasn't there today, but I think yesterday it was pretty rough.
Okay.
Whole stretch is bad.
They have to maintain that trench during the whole time, and.
So they'll have to just come back and
Oh,
do
yeah,
it and do it?
that's common. That's
It
very
is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's common for them to come back, and it's really, we know that the trenches stop settling when we stop seeing the sediment occurring. And the fact that we're seeing it now, it's just evident that it needs more time to settle. You know, and again, I've just seen it happen too many times where the pavement is rushed and over a short period of time, we'll see those two lines down the center of the
Right.
road where the trench was, because it just requires a quarter of an inch, half inch of additional settlement, and the cracking will start. So
Go reach out to him, Karen.
All right, well, if you have, I'll call them again. I don't mind doing it. I mean, that's my job.
And frankly, we could look at the school schedule and see when there's a week off, holiday week or something, and that may be the week that we tell them to come in and do it, and that we can certainly look at the school schedule.
Okay.
Because it's not a long period, do the milling and do the paving, they can aggressively do that likely in 2 days.
Okay, thanks, we'll stay on top of it.
Possibly a weekend, we could ask them,
There you go.
do it on a weekend.
Thank you, John.
Just other items, also on the consent agenda, you'll see award for a contract for UV upgrades. That's at the Tanglewood Treatment Plant. It's just a device. It provides disinfection for the wastewater treatment plant, and that piece of equipment is well served. The plant, it's well over 20 years old. It's beyond its service life. It needs to be replaced, so that's a requirement. We did budget for that. Another project that is going on is a Chatham Heights Pump Station. The contractor has mobilized and started doing that work. That pump station is in a very remote location off of River Road. It's not going to impact anyone, I'm sure, and you probably won't even see the work if you don't, it's difficult to even see the station off of River Road. But the work has started, don't anticipate any issues or problems, and it'll take a couple months just to complete that contract. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, John. Chief, do you have anything? Tom?
No, one thing, I'll wait till you get to the consent agenda. On one of the resolutions, there's a need for a correction.
Okay. One of the resolutions has a correction. Right now, we'll open this up to a hearing of citizens. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearing tonight. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes.
Tracy Ness, 31 Jeffrey Court, Chatham Township. First off, I want to give a big shout out to the DPW. We have a lot of construction going on J Road, which is the access point to get into Jeffrey Court. And there was quite a deep little sinkhole, like a mini sinkhole going on. I called them on my way to the office and said, there's this sinkhole there, and could you come fix it? I got low profile tires, I'm hitting it if I'm not paying attention. And on my way back from work, it was done. So a big thank you to the DPW. I actually posted a thank you on the Chatham Community Forum where lots of people wrote, thank you, great job, all those good things. So I wanted to say that tonight. So that was really helpful. Secondly, I wanted to find out what was going to happen. And John, although we don't want you to leave, we know that you're going. So I wanted to find out what's going to happen with the open seat with regards to the November election.
Well, I don't know that John has resigned from the committee yet, so he's still here. So there's been no decision on that regard right now.
At this point, I have not resigned from the committee. I have not given a formal date. The plan would be triggered by that resignation, and it would be a function of timing, from what I understand.
In speaking with the clerks, it's not really a question of timing. It's a question of the fact that since you haven't served, because no fault of your own, commuting back and forth from North Carolina is not an easy thing to do, but it's a function of the time length of service in the term. So
Tracy, I hate to be rude, but this is really a political question. It's really not a governing body issue. It's something that when Mr. Mauer reaches the point where he's ready to formally resign, it then goes to the Republican committee, and there's a whole process laid out statutorily to be followed. But at this point, there's nothing for this governing body to do.
So they don't need to inform residents whether there's going to be a seat available on the general election because the first year of the term
Nobody
was
knows
not...
that yet until Mr. Mauer makes his final decision as to when he's going to leave.
Okay, so then my question would be,
And
there's...
again, it's a political question, it's not a legal.
It's a statutorial question, and that question is, since a committeeman, whoever it is, does not fulfill the first year of their term, it doesn't make any difference when they resign. That position remands to the township voters to either be voted on by special election or go to the November election. Doesn't make any difference when he resigns, because the first year of the term was not served. So the
And
opportunity...
what is your question? It sounds like you've already researched it and know what you think is supposed to happen.
Well, that's what I think, but there's a couple of different things going on. So my question is that of a statutorial question to let township residents know whether there's going to be a seat available in the November election. So I'm assuming, since you're the governing body, the clerk is here, your municipal attorney is here, that somebody would have thought of this question and said, what's going to happen with this seat?
Well,
It's not a political question, is it going to be open or not?
No, it is a political question because the governing body of the town GOP committee, as Tom alluded to, gets to do one of two things. They get to appoint someone if Mr. Mauer steps down for his remaining term, and this body also gets to either that same person or someone else to appoint them to be on the general election ballot, depending, again, on a timing situation. If that falls out of a certain window, then that person who fills the remaining seat would have to run next year in the primary, and assuming that person would win, would have to run next year again in the general, and then would have to run again next year, the following year in the primary, and in the next year in the general, because that's Mr. Mauer's regular time frame. You never get off the regular cycle of the 2-2-1 that the committee is presently made up of. So that would be the process, but it all gets triggered upon when Mr. Mauer leaves town, or when he resigns.
Okay. The clerk had given me something called a statute 40A 1615, 16-5. No, the municipal clerk, the county clerk, which says that if a vacancy occurs anytime subsequent to September 1st of the next to the last year and up to the expiration of the term of the officer whose office becomes vacant, it may be filled for its unexpired term provided by appointment by the governing body provided hereafter. So that would be the next to the last year of that 3-year term, as I'm reading it. If the vacancy occurs at any other time, the vacancy shall be filled for its unexpired term at the next general election, to be held not less than 60 days after the occurrence of the vacancy. The governing body may fill a vacancy temporarily by appointment. So by reading this, because now this is what I'm trying to understand. Is it going to be, there seems to be a conflict of what the statutes are saying. So this...
I don't think there's any conflict whatsoever. You just read it, read it to yourself again. 60 days, if the resignation occurs closer than 60 days to the general election, it's not held until the following year.
If
And
it's in the
interim,
third year of the...
No.
No. So
If
that's not-
if it's in the final year of the term, then the political committee would come up with the 3 names, and the township committee would select one of those 3 names. If it's in the first or second year, as Mr. Mauer's term now is, then it would be at the next general election, not less than 60 days after the resignation. So the only real question here is, will it be the coming November election or the 2018 November election? And that depends on when Mr. Mauer actually resigns. So it's
Okay,
going to be
so-
done
Takes
with
us
a general
full
election.
circle, which is why I told you it's a political question. It's not really a question for this forum, but I hope that you have a clear understanding of the process.
My guess would be understanding of whether that's going to come as in the 2018 election.
Well, none of us
Versus
are
the
going to know until
2019.
Mr. Mauer submits his resignation. And then you look at the statute and apply the calendar.
Just trying to keep the residents informed. Thank you.
Tracy, I will say that you did a great job in calling DPW when you had an issue on your roads, because they are about the most responsive folks in our township that you can imagine. And they will come and help out a pothole, they'll help out a drainage issue in your curb. They're really great, and it's nice for you to acknowledge them. They do that every day. They're a great bunch of guys. So thank you, Rich, and thanks, Jim.
They won't shovel my driveway.
Anyone else want to come forward for the public hearing?
Well,
Oh, sorry.
I'll comment.
Sure.
I mean, I am in the process of figuring out my timing, but I can assure you, Tracy, who I've known for a number of years, I'm, committed to, fulfill my obligations until I'm no longer a resident of Chatham Township. At this point in time, I'm in the process of figuring that out. When I decide to resign, I will make it public. I gave people a very much advance notice in terms of what's going on in my life, in terms of sharing what's going on. So I appreciate your respectfulness in terms of how you present this, but I am in the process of figuring that out. Having said that, I have been approached privately by a couple of people who are interested, and I'm sure you know people who are interested in this position as well. And so again, I'm very mindful of all that as well. But I would appreciate everyone being respectful in terms of me figuring out when I'm going to resign from this position, because again, I didn't take it lightly when I ran for this position up front, and I don't take it lightly when I resign. And I am committed to, fulfilling those obligations as long as I'm a resident here. So I'm happy to, share that with everyone.
Great, thank you, John. So moving on, ordinance 2017-10, it's the bond ordinance discussed at the last meeting. Does anyone in the committee have any comments, questions? We'll open up for a hearing of citizens. Seeing no one coming forward, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mauer?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
And Mayor Ritter.
Yes. Next ordinance for final adoption is ordinance 2017-11. This is amending the zoning designation for block 144, lot 33, discussed at the last meeting. Anyone on the committee have any comments, questions? Tom?
Just to report, Mayor, that the planning board did take this matter up on Monday evening, and they endorsed making this change.
Great, thank you. Open up for hearing of citizens. Anyone want to come forward to speak on this? Seeing no one coming forward, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Mauer?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter.
Yes. Next on, moving on to the consent agenda. We have 10 resolutions up here. I want to make note of resolution number 9, resolution 9, 2017-122, appointing member to the Environmental Commission. My understanding is this is a mayoral appointment, so it does not need committee approval. So we will, I guess, remove it from, make a motion to remove it from the consent agenda, or do we have to, we'll just pull it?
I think you can just pull it, Mayor, but this is in fact the one that I wanted to make a correction on, so that when you do file your appointment with the clerk, the term will actually expire December 31st, 2018, not 19. These are 2-year terms, and this is for the unexpired term of a vacancy, so it actually expires the end of next year, not 19.
Great. And I will be making this mayoral appointment for the record. Consent agenda. Greg, could you please read it out?
Resolution 2017-114, payment of bills. 2017-115, approving meeting minutes. 2017-116, approving executive session minutes. 2017-117, amending budget NJDOT grant. 2017-118, renewal of liquor licenses. 2017-119, contract for road resurfacing project. 2017-120, another contract for road resurfacing project. 2017-121, releasing escrow balances. 2017-122, that one was just dealt with. 2017-123, awarding contract for Woodland Road Pathway Extension. 2017-124, amending 2017 budget, Clean Communities Grant. And 2017-125, awarding contract for UV upgrades at sewer plant.
Does anybody have any questions on these resolutions? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes?
Mayor Ritter?
Yes to all minus Resolution 2017-118. I'll recuse myself.
Okay.
We'll now move on. Any open discussion items from anyone in the committee? We'll now open it up for a second hearing of citizens. If anyone would like to come forward? All right, seeing no one come forward, we'll close out the hearing of citizens. Greg, would you mind reading the executive session There's no exec?
Before we do that, I'll ask, I guess we don't have anything? Okay.
Wow, the first time? We don't know what to do. Do I
No.
ask for a motion to adjourn?
Kevin said that he was determined to get home and see the Rachel Maddow show, so.
I guess we'll take a motion to adjourn in public forum here.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned. Wow.